Okay.
Hello? Hello.
Alright, that's good. I'm good if you are.
I'm ready.
Okay. We're doing 95 first?
But it's the 96 nominees released in 95, right?
I always refer to the year, so.
Okay, cool.
Hi! Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Editing Academy. I'm Daryl.
I'm Laura.
And Laura.
We haven't clapped.
Oh.
That was a clap. Excellent. Well done.
That was to make up for the lack of one for last time.
Yeah, exactly. We gotta get back into our groove.
Laura, what's the year and what are the films that we're talking about, please?
These are the 1996 Best Picture nominees that were released in 1995, and they include Apollo 13, Babe, Braveheart, Il Postino, and Sense and Sensibility.
All right. Top 5 movies of 1995 were in order: Batman Forever, Apollo 13, Toy Story, Pocahontas, and Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. Other notables released that year: Billy Madison, Crimson Tide, Dead Man Walking, Showgirls, Waterworld, Mr. Holland's Opus, GoldenEye, Desperado, Get Shorty, one of my personal favorites, Seven, absolutely brilliant, 12 Monkeys, Leaving Las Vegas, Bad Boys, and The Usual Suspect, which almost made my top 20.
The fact that one wasn't nominated actually really surprises me.
I think
And Seven, I think, should have been nominated too.
I agree with that. And I think Usual Suspects just flew under everybody's radar because it was Singer's first movie, super low budget.
Yeah. Slow burn.
All right. Apollo 13?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Apollo 13, directed by Ron Howard, starring Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, Bill Paxton, Gary Sinise, Ed Harris, and Kathleen Quinlan. Screenplay was by William Broyles Jr. and Al Reinhardt. It's an adaptation of the 1994 book, so it just came out the year before, so this was a quick turnaround. Lost Moon, The Perilous Voyage of Apollo 13 by Jim Lovell and Jeffrey Kluger. Was nominated for a ton. Best Picture, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Best Actress in a Supporting Role, Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, Best Original Dramatic Score, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects. And it only won for editing and for Best Sound. Go the facts. I'm curious about this one.
Curious about the facts. So first of all, none of these movies, I'm just going to say up front, are on the AFI list.
Got it.
So two kind of related fun facts. So one of them is just about the way, we'll probably get into this, the way they filmed the movie was,
Okay.
I think a lot of people know that, Ron Howard wanted to make it as realistic as possible, so did a lot of zero gravity plane flights
The
and
Vomit
dropped
Comet.
folks, exactly, so that they could do that in space. So I think a lot of people knew that, and we're probably going to talk about that as a technique. So I went to casting. A lot of family casting in this. So the person who played Tom Hanks' mother was, in fact, Ron Howard's mother.
Oh, okay.
So, who was an actress and had, done a lot of things over, if you look at her IMDb, but had a pretty long career. The wife of Bill Paxton was played by Tracy Reiner, who is the daughter of Penny Marshall and Rob Reiner. And then also, when they were casting the parts, Ron Howard wanted Gary Sinise and said, pick whatever part you want. Any of the male leads are yours. And Gary Sinise chose the part of Ray, who does not go up in the ship, because he thought it was the more interesting of the parts, which I found interesting.
Yeah.
The original choices were John Cusack for Bill Paxton's role.
Yeah, no.
No.
That would not have worked.
Bill Paxton was great. And Brad Pitt for the Kevin Bacon role. And Brad was busy doing Seven.
Huh.
I wouldn't have seen that either. I think that they nailed it with Bill Paxton and Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, the cast is pretty spot on in this one.
Agree.
They all work incredibly well off each other. They all do their roles, and it would be hard to imagine anybody else. The only one that I could possibly see would be Brad Pitt in the Kevin Bacon role, although I think Kevin Bacon absolutely nailed it.
I think
could
it was perfect.
possibly see that one.
Yeah.
The rest of them, absolutely not.
And I don't know how far he got into the process, but there was, John Travolta really wanted the Tom Hanks role because he is a pilot and really wanted this role. I don't know how far that got into the actual process of him auditioning and stuff, but he made it known to Ron Howard he wanted it.
Okay.
So he got busy doing Get Shorty.
Yes.
It's a very busy year for all these actors.
Yeah, there was a lot. Brad was in 2 or 3 this year, that year. All right. I'm going to acknowledge a couple things up front. never been a huge Ron Howard fan as a
Okay.
director. The sentimentality that he brings to all of his films is a little too much for me. He tends to be put in your face, kind of hammered home, and I really don't like that aspect, except for this film.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
think he was the right person to direct this because this is dripping with tension and sentimentality, the story just in and of itself. So I thought he was the right director for this, and honestly, even kind of pulled back a lot of the sentimentality that he does bring to films. It is not as overly over the top as a lot of his other films are. So I thought he reined it in and he gave just the right amount. So this is really the only Ron Howard movie that I'm like, this was well done, sir, well done.
Yeah, I generally like Ron Howard movies, but as you know, like I have two categories of movies, which are the ones I like and are emotionally important to me, and ones that I see as good movies. The Venn diagram of those two are fairly not close, you know, except for we'll talk about later on in this batch. But so I like Ron Howard movies, but I don't necessarily think they're great movies. And this one, I thought there was too much sentimentality in it in a couple of places, one of which was the Tom Hanks you know, at one point he is looking at the moon of, oh, I wish I had been there. And you know what he's thinking. You don't need the scene of him actually getting off the spaceship and walking onto the moon in his fantasy. Like, we all knew where he was.
Yep.
Like, that extra scene was too much. And the same thing with his wife, you know, fearing for him going, unlucky number 13, all of these things, and then she loses her wedding ring down the shower drain.
Yeah,
It's
I was
like,
going to bring that one up.
so too much. It was just ratcheted just a little too much in a couple of spots. Not everywhere, but a couple of spots.
Yeah, the whole bad luck losing the wedding ring down the shower thing, and then of course then something happens to it.
Yes.
I do know that was apparently a real thing that
Was
did
it really?
happen.
Okay, all right.
That's what the internet told me.
Okay, I thought it was something that they just put into the movie, but okay.
And you are right. There are moments where this film is definitely over the top as far as pulling on the heartstrings. I just think for the story overall, those moments they don't enhance the film by any means, but I don't think they detract from it as they do in a lot of other Ron Howard films.
I would agree with that. And I do think that, and you know, I really want to talk about the technical pieces of this movie. It was a very well done movie. It took something that was very complicated. I mean, all of the switches and the vents, and well, we need this, and they've got too much of that, and into this, you know, canister and out of that capsule. It was very, very complicated, and it really was made easy for the viewer without dumbing it down.
One of the things that I thought was an interesting choice for them to do exactly along those lines is usually the technical components would start with a comment from the guys in the NASA flight command, and then it would cut to the actual live version televised news of like Walter Cronkite or somebody talking about it, giving what the situation was, and then you go back to them talking about it just a little bit further and trying to figure something out. So that was able to give you, this is the problem, here's the issue, here's why this is an issue, without having to super dumb down the language, because they primarily relied on what was actually being told at the time. I thought that was clever.
Yep, I completely agree with you. And you got to see it in several different places, like you were talking, and then even with Ray trying to figure out, okay, I'm in the exact same situation, I'm in the exact same circumstances, what do I do? And you're seeing him try to work it out in real time. And I thought that was really interesting.
Along those lines, one of my favorite scenes in the movie was after they realized that the oxygen level, their oxygen is fine, but their CO2 is rising and they're basically going to end up suffocating. And they have to figure out what to do based on what they have up there, because they can't just like swing by and drop something off.
Yep.
And so I love the scene where they come in and they just have a box of everything that is available, and was like, go, this is what you got, go. I mean, like, they even got it down to using their socks, like, and that part is absolutely true, but I did like how that was handled, because you can initially see the desperation and shock on everybody's faces, like, what? And then no, you have to figure this out, and then of course they did, which is coupled, that whole mentality, with one of my favorite lines in the film, which is the Ed Harris line, when they go to, right before I think they go to blackout, and one of the guys makes an offhanded comment of like, this is going to be a disaster, and Ed, with full determination and believing it, says, no sir, I think this is going to be our finest hour.
I love that movie. Yeah,
that was
part,
an absolutely sentimental moment, but that one was earned and it worked.
It was, and also, as far as performances go too, Ed Harris was such a standout in this
Yes.
movie. And
He is, I think, the best in this film.
I agree completely. I put Gary Sinise as a very close second because he just had more to work with. He had the excitement to the disappointment to the heroic moment.
Yep.
I mean, like his character went all over the place, and I thought he really played that out well. But Ed Harris was the one you were watching.
Yep.
And when they brought them home and he knew that they were safe, his relief, and you knew that it was somewhat what he believed, but also there's a lot of bravado there too. And then he's like, "Oh shit, we did it!"
Yes.
You know. So and it was just that he almost collapsed with the happiness of, wow, this happened and I didn't know that it would.
Yeah, he had to be the one to make everybody else believe
Yeah.
it. I mean, yes, I do believe he believed that it was possible, but he had to make everybody else believe that it was something they absolutely could do. Don't question, just figure it out. Because when your commander shows any form of doubt, that doubt will creep in your head,
Yeah.
particularly in high stress situations. Yeah, my quote my note that I did is Ed Harris is my favorite character in this movie by far.
Yep, I totally agree. I would say on the opposite end of the spectrum, and it's not her fault, is Kathleen Quinlan.
She didn't have a lot to work
Did
with.
not have a lot to work with. She did a great job with what she had, but she had the, supportive, worried wife, and it was a little too much.
Yeah.
But I actually loved the mother when, again,
Oh,
played
yeah.
by Ron Howard's mother, when, who was it, does Neil Armstrong comes in and she's like, "Oh, do you
Yeah,
guys
it was.
work with my son?"
Yep.
And that was adorable, and it was very cute, and so you needed those scenes back at the house, you needed to ground it to what is he returning to, but it was also not a lot to work with.
All the characters were fairly well established. Like, you didn't need a lot to understand who they were. The command center itself gets established very quickly,
Yep.
like who individuals are and their kind of personalities.
Yep.
That gets established pretty quickly, so that when things happen later and you go to like Ron Howard's brother, who played one of the
Command guys.
like when you cut to him, you understood not necessarily the technical aspects of what his job was, but you understood what he was in charge of and what they were asking of him.
Right.
That was pretty well established. All the tertiary characters well established. So the development, you didn't need a lot of development of characters because they were established pretty quickly, pretty easily. So it was more just the story and how are you telling the story. One flaw that I will say, and this is not the movie's fault, it's just time. The graphics do not hold up.
No, they don't.
They really don't.
They
And
don't.
I mean, they were, state of the art at the time,
Yeah.
but this would be a much, you could lose, like, watching it in retrospect now, you can get taken out a little bit when they have a rocket flying through and it's so apparently just bad effects.
It is. And some of the effects, I did read that Ron Howard, some of the effects were so bad that he went to practical effects. So like, for instance, the capsule with the parachutes kind of coming out of the sky, they originally did that with effects and it didn't look good. And so he just made like a little Barbie-sized one and threw it down, and it looked even better than the one that they tried to create. Yeah. Oh shoot, I had one more comment and I
It's
forgot
okay.
what it was.
I have
That's
a question for you. There have been a lot of space movies over the years. A lot of them do get nominated because of the inherent drama in the thing that they're doing. So I wanted to contrast this one slightly with The Right Stuff, which tells a grander story.
That was a comment. That was my comment. It was about the right stuff.
Okay.
Go for it. What's your question?
So, these are two very different movies, but set around the same time period, dealing with certain things. This one is very micro-focused,
Yes.
The Right Stuff was macro-focused. So an easy example in this one is the astronauts' wives, are completely taken almost out of the film, essentially.
Yes.
Whereas in The Right Stuff, they have a much more prominent role.
Fair.
So I was curious, as if you were watching that, were you making some of these comparisons to The Right Stuff in your head? Because they are different stories, even though they're the same time.
I was very much, and I'll tell you about the thing that brought me back to the right stuff, which was a little bit different. But I was, and I thought it was appropriate, because this is about an event. This is about one moment and a space misadventure that happens.
Yep.
And so it's not about all of the time they've spent in the space program. It's not about their marriages or how their lives. It's about a 7-day period?
Yeah, approximately.
And so I don't think you need that much backstory. I don't think you need that much of a family connection. You knew 2 of them were married, one of them was a bit of a hound dog. Like, that's all you really need to know about these people.
Right.
And The Right Stuff, it was how they went from being pilots to being astronauts, and it's about them as people, and so I thought it was much more appropriate. So differences, but I thought appropriate differences.
Yeah, this one was much more about in interpersonal dynamics and relationships.
Between the three men
Yeah,
in that moment.
Than anything else. Like the story is, this is a thing that happened. Here's how we lead up to the thing. Here's the thing. Here's what happened after.
Yeah.
But it really is about the dynamics and the personal relationships that these people have. Whereas The Right Stuff, because it was telling a grander,
Right.
you had to have a lot of not filler, but you had to have more to be able to tell the story at that kind of scope.
Right, it's the years of how they got there rather than the 7 days of here we are.
Yeah.
So the only thing I was going to say about The Right Stuff was, now that we've already done The Right Stuff, and a lot of people who are watching Apollo 13 have either lived through the events of The Right Stuff or seen the movie The Right Stuff. So the Gus Grissom storyline, where Gus Grissom, obviously, and the astronauts, as it happened in real life, died in an accident on the launching pad. They spent just a few minutes on that. They didn't need to tell us the whole story.
Right.
They just basically assumed the audience knew about this story and would understand why the little boy was afraid. That's all they needed to do. It was really minimally invasive. They didn't tell us the whole story. They assumed the audience was educated on it, which I liked.
Yeah, the film did rely on the fact that you do already know at least something about
Right.
the space program. We don't have to explain a lot to you.
Yeah, and again, to make a story where there's a happy ending,
Mm-hmm.
be very tense and there's times where there's tension. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Well, I know what's going to happen.
Right.
But
you still get lost.
You
in it.
still got lost in the movie, and
Yeah.
that took some talent.
Yeah, this is the fourth, maybe fifth time I've seen this one.
Probably same for me.
It's an easy one to go to because you know the story, you know the beats of this one, you know the up and down of it. Honestly, now I can wait probably 10 years before seeing it again, but.
It's another one of those, it's a good movie and it's a good popcorn movie.
Yeah.
And we've seen a couple of those along the way too.
That's all I have about that.
Same here.
Shall we move on to Babe?
That'll do, Daryl, that'll do.
Babe, directed by Chris Noonan, produced by George Miller, and was written by both. It is an adaptation of Dick King Smith's 1983 novel, The Sheep Pig. The film's narrated by Roscoe Lee Brown, stars James Cromwell, Hoggett Magda Subansky, sorry about that.
Did pretty well, actually.
Thank you. Voice talents of Christine Cavanaugh as Babe, Danny Mann as Ferdinand, Miriam Margolis as Fly, Hugo Weaving as Rex, Miriam Flynn as Ma, and Rusty Taylor as Duchess. Nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Adapted Screenplay, Art Direction, Film Editing, and Visual Effects. It won for Visual Effects. Go with some facts.
Alright, so the fun facts are, after this movie, James Cromwell became a vegetarian. Because he basically is like, look at how all the little animals work together. So he became a vegetarian. And then the other thing I thought was really interesting is, you know how they have the little mice in the corner that kind of read the chapter headings between scenes? The reason they did that, they did not originally have that in the test showings. The smaller children could not read the chapter headings. And so they created the little mice who read it out loud. For smaller children watching the movie that didn't know what they said.
I also think that's a cool thing.
Oh, it was cute.
Because it does help you kind of, you can read the chapter titles, but it's also a beat to the movie.
I agree, so I really liked it. And then the third fun fact about this movie is, I never saw it before, so this is my first watch on Babe.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So-
I have a couple interesting things for you.
Okay, great.
So, George Miller,
Yes.
notorious director for Happy Feet, but also all of the Mad Max movies.
Very strange.
And
Yes.
28 Days Later.
Yep.
He does kids films and he does absolutely adult films, and he does both spectacularly. He and Chris Noonan, the director, got in a public fight
I did hear this, yeah.
because Chris wanted to take all of the credit for Babe, and even though he was listed as a co-writer, it was principally written by George. And so when he started to take a lot of credit on the press tour for the feel, the look, and all of the things for the film, George was like, no man, I fucking handed this to you on a silver platter. Stop. And then they went at it.
There was something in what I was reading about James Cromwell has been asked many times about what was it like on the movie, and he basically says, there was some tension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they famously did not get along together, so I found that interesting.
Understandably.
Also, I don't know if you know, but I'm just going to dive into a couple things
Go
real
for
quick. The most of this is animal scenes.
Yeah.
And for the most part, like 97% are seamlessly blended between actual live animal and the animatronics.
Mhm.
The animatronics were done by the Jim Henson Creature Shop.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, and they were top notch at the
course.
time. But that part, I think, is one of the absolute strengths of the film, is that the ability for them to be able to weave back and forth and have you not recognize it unless
Mhm.
you're like paying micro attention to it. That seamlessness, if that didn't work, this movie would not work.
That's what gives it its heart and soul.
Yes.
Absolutely. Nope, I totally agree.
And then, of course, there was some minor CGI with the mouths
Yeah.
occasionally, but that was fine. I have a friend, Cole, who
Mhm.
calls this the perfect movie.
You told me that before I saw it, yeah.
And while I don't 100% agree with him, I think it's pretty damn close.
It's a good movie. It is a very, very good movie. It is very sweet. It is very technically well done. The reason I had avoided this movie is I generally find these kind of movies creepy. So
Okay.
I hate Polar Express. It creeps
gotcha.
me right out. Like the whole morphing people and animatronics and all that kind of stuff. It takes me out of the movie. I don't like it. This I was in. I was absolutely in from the moment. I formed a lovely attachment to Babe, and he was adorable. So I really enjoyed it so much more than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, this is one of those, and we've said it multiple times, but this is one that I'm always surprised at how well crafted and what a good movie this is.
Yeah.
Because, and there have been a couple of those. On its surface, if you describe this to somebody, like this is what this movie is, here's a couple little things about it, someone would be like, yeah, okay, I'm good. Like,
There's a reason I've avoided this for 30 years.
I'm
Yeah.
not 12, like I'm good. And then you watch it, and from the first 5 minutes, you are hooked and you are in for the ride. You buy into it, or at least I do every time. You buy into the premise that yes, these animals talk to each other, and that's totally fine. It's got some moral tales which are pretty decent. But overall, it really is just the story that keeps you going throughout. All the other stuff is secondary. It is really the story that is at the heart of this. And this is one of those films that's 100% what it is. It does not pretend. It embraces fully its own thing.
It's very clever, but it's also very simple,
Mhm.
which I think is very hard to do.
Yes.
Both something clever. It made you feel good. It is the James Cromwell and his wife. First of all, I just loved them. I thought they were adorable. I thought they understood the assignment. They knew what they were there for. They were secondary characters to the animals.
Yep.
They were not supposed to be anyone we paid attention to for the most part, and yet they each grew a little bit over the course of the movie, which I thought was fantastic. I really liked them. Something I thought was interesting is most of the actors who voiced the animals were voice actors.
Mhm.
And this was a time when voice actors were used in animated movies. Now they're almost all well-known actors.
Yeah.
There's a difference. There is such a difference between a voice actor and a celebrity
Yeah.
that voice characters. I really enjoyed the emotion they put into the animals.
The biggest exception to that would be, and this was an Australian film, or
Mhm.
New Zealand.
Australian, I think.
Okay. Was Hugo Weaving, who
Yes. Rex.
who after this did come on and do a principal character in 2 major franchises,
Fair, yeah.
but was a massive Australian star. Like he
Yeah.
was all over the place. Everybody knew who Hugo was, so this was kind of a big deal for him as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good exception to it.
Um,
So what makes Cole and you, less or so, but think that this is a perfect movie? Like what is the perfection?
It is hard to find absolute flaws in this
Yeah.
because everything is handled so well and it is so well crafted. And honestly, I wanted something to be able to pull apart, be like, that could have been done better. And I lost myself in the enjoyment of the film.
Yeah.
So it was hard for me to focus on minor things. I'm sure there are a couple that people online, because they always will point out.
Yeah.
But there is nothing glaring about this that's like, this performance, it takes you out of the movie, or the visuals didn't. The farm is completely well utilized. It is used so many in so many different aspects. You get a full sense of that farm.
It's so whimsical too.
Yes.
All of the set design is incredibly whimsical.
It's very, very bright, except for when it's not.
Exactly, very cozy. It looked like a little off kilter, and
Yeah.
I just thought it was very, very sweet.
It almost has like a fairy tale like vibe to it, even though it's not a fairy tale. It's more of like a fable, I guess. It's not a fairy tale, but it has that kind of feel underneath to it.
Yeah. Even though it is obviously very emotional, very sweet children's movie, it is not overly sentimental.
No,
either.
not at all.
Poor Duck's girlfriend gets eaten for Christmas dinner,
Yep.
so that's a bummer.
Ferdinand.
Rex is an abusive husband.
Yes.
There's some animals' bad behavior. Spoiler alert for a 30-year-old animated movie, but Ma the sheep dies. I mean, there's some sad things that happen in this movie, and so it is. Things are not always rosy on a farm.
No. The only thing that the only negative I can really say is there is a convenience to the film when Babe is actually going out to be the sheep pig, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Rex goes and it confronts all the other sheep, and they give up like a secret word that will suddenly unlock and make all sheep obey. That is convenient, so that would be a negative, because it is convenient. I don't know how else you would have done that, and it does make sense in the kind of fairy tale-esque aspect of it, but that is definitely convenient.
Right. And also, I think they needed to show that Rex turned his, turned his character and became a good guy.
Yeah. The moral of this, which I think is hugely important in today's times, one of the morals that I get out of it is that being nice to people, asking questions, talking to them is probably going to get you further than being angry, mean, bullying, and biting.
I think that's a good moral to take away from it, especially in these times.
Yes.
Could you show your t-shirt to the crowd at home?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Maybe.
Dun, dun, dun. Science doesn't care what you believe in.
There you go. I like it.
So yeah, this one is very, I don't have a lot to say because it is so incredibly well crafted and enjoyable. We've pointed out all the things that I like about it, and there's really not a lot of negative here.
It's a very sweet movie. I liked it, and I think that it was probably ahead of its time on a technical standpoint when it was created.
Yeah, alright. Shall we move on to a big epic?
Braveheart.
Braveheart. Directed, produced by Mel Gibson, Sophia Marceau, Patrick McGoohan, Catherine McCormick, and Angus McFadden. The story is inspired by Blind Harry's 15th century epic poem, The Acts and Deeds of the Illustrious and Valiant Companion Sir William Wallace. 15th century epic poem, and was adapted for the screen by Randall Wallace. Nominated for a ton of stuff: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Makeup, Best Dramatic Score, Best Sound Effects Editing. It won for Sound Effects Editing, Makeup, Cinematography, Director for Mel, and for Best Picture. Goes Max.
All right, so you might be better at picking out actors than I am. There were a couple that I recognized, but I had to look up who they were because it was so long ago and they were so very bushy.
Yep.
And Brian Cox played
Yes.
the Uncle Argyle,
Yep.
and Brendan Gleeson played Hamish.
Yep.
And I knew them both, and I was like, oh, of course, but I needed to look those one up. Two interesting facts. One is that most of the extras played in both armies. They just switched clothes as needed, depending on how many soldiers they needed on either side for any particular battle scene. And it has also been voted. It's been said to be one of the most historically inaccurate movie of modern times.
Yes, I was going to mention that as well.
Yeah.
It gets hammered all the time for its historical inaccuracies, not only of the time period, but also the things that happened.
Exactly. And then the other thing I had no idea was there was a sequel to Braveheart in 2019 called Robert the Bruce, starring Angus McFadden
Really?
as Robert the Bruce again. So yeah, and it kind of picks up right after Braveheart and brings him to the battle that wins Scotland their freedom.
There was a Netflix movie with Christopher Pine, which essentially is the same thing. It takes Robert the Bruce right after and goes forward. It's the one that he got full frontal in, and everybody was like, "Woo!"
I was literally just about to say, oh, I've seen that one, and now it just makes me sound creepy. But I did see that one. It was very good.
Okay. This is I think one of the reasons why I was doing some research, because I enjoy this movie. I do not love this movie, but I enjoy this movie. And a lot of people love this movie. So I was seeing why some people loved it so much, because there are definitely flaws with this film. And one of the big things is, you have to remember, 1995, the big battle epic had
Yes.
not been firmly established yet,
Mhm.
and this, at the time, for the big battles that happened, was absolutely groundbreaking. Now, like with, Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and things like that, we just expect them, and we will criticize when they're not as
Yes.
big and grand as we want. But this one was really one of, not the first, but definitely one of the first, and one of the first that was so incredibly popular. And that's why a lot of people watch it. Like the side storylines, a lot of the people I fast forward to those just to get to the battle scenes.
Yeah.
So I can see that, because particularly at the time, it was groundbreaking for the mass scale of what they were doing.
Yeah, I think in watching this movie, so this is probably the second time I've seen it.
Okay.
In watching this movie, I had to do a lot of putting myself in 1995 time space. First of all, I despise Mel Gibson. I think he's a vile and odious person. And so you have to take yourself out of that. And you just have to be like, is he a good filmmaker, and is this a good film? Which I think I did, because I can appreciate a lot of the things that he did. And I actually even appreciated his performance, where there were some parts where he was quite charming, and you could see that. So I think I was able to do that, and I did the same thing of, okay, I'm looking at this battle scene for the first time in 1995, and it's quite impressive. Yeah.
I don't embrace it as fully as you do, but I'm not a big Mel Gibson fan anymore either. But the man was charismatic on screen.
He absolutely was.
And this was before we knew a lot of stuff. That, however, I think is one of the criticisms of this movie, is Mel is really, really pretty in this movie.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And that can take you out of it, because when you look around at all the other characters, with the possible exception of Robert the Bruce, everybody else are not pretty people. And he is a standout, because he is just like super charming, and like he's a pretty man.
He is. There's a couple of things that took me out of the moment. One of them was exactly that he was beautiful and charming, and the bright blue eyes and all of that kind of stuff. Another one was his, like every time he sees Hamish punches him out, and like that's kind of silly. It struck me as just silly for the movie that he was creating, and yet it was more of a rakish kind of look at us with our bromance thing going on. So it took you out of the moment. There were definitely little things like that. The other thing, when you're stepping aside from the battles for a moment and talking about some of those side plot lines, his relationship with his wife, the woman that he married, did he ever really mourn her? Because I think I missed it. It was a blink and you miss it mourning.
Yeah, there was no real mourning on his part.
Right.
I mean, it's implied that he has been doing it, but you never see it on screen.
You never see on screen his sadness over her death.
She dies, he instantly goes into revenge mode.
Yeah.
And that's another part that I have a problem with the movie, is we go from, like, I'm going to go kill the person who killed my wife, and then I'll be done with it, to suddenly everybody else saying, oh, this is the start of a rebellion, and then it becomes the start of a rebellion. I've never bought into that. Like, he accomplished what he wanted, and he was done, but then now it's a rebellion, like that. And I never bought that.
Right, and the same thing is that he went from, I just want to live in peace and be a farmer. And yes, he went to, okay, well, my wife is dead and I'm going to avenge her death. And now I'm going to take on the mantle of the whole kingdom. And that's kind of silly too. The other heavy-handed piece I thought was silly, and the way it was done was the wedding scene between the Prince and Princess of Wales. So basically, it is the prince looking at the princess like, ugh, you. And the princess looks at the prince, oh, my prince. And then the prince looks at his best man of, hey, we're meeting up later, right? And the king sees the look and is scowling at all of them. Like, it's like a silent movie, and not in a good way. They are just such overblown looks and reactions of, okay, I know where everybody stands there, but it was stupid and it bugged me.
Yep, I agree. There were a lot of moments that were completely unnecessary for this film. This film could benefit from some editing, some tightening up.
Big
like
time.
A lot of the side plots you didn't really need as much. You can kind of hint at them, imply them, show a little bit, but you didn't need to have full exploration of them. I'll give Mel credit. He is a very good director. He knows what a scene is supposed to be. He knows what that scene is supposed to accomplish. He knows how to set it up properly so that you're seeing exactly what he wants you to see. It's well shot, it's well filmed. He's a great director. There's just too much in this movie, and it gets bogged down because of it.
And a lot of that too much brings me back to the Warren Beatty of it all is he showcasing himself.
Yes.
Rather than showcasing what the movie needs.
Yeah, I agree.
Going back to the battle scenes for a minute, because, and I get, they were impressive for their time, and they were something people hadn't seen, and I give them the props for that. I did think they were too much, though. It was a little too much, too long. You weren't seeing, okay, oh, this person that I care about is in peril, or, I see what's happening. I just thought it was a little too long.
That is a criticism that Mel gets, because a lot of the films that he does are very violent films.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever saw The Passion of the Christ.
I did.
It is a lot of bloody beating of Christ and just staying on that torment and violence. And that is something, like even Apocalypto, he did it in. The World War I movie that he did as well. That is a criticism that he has, that his big scenes are overly done, and I get that. I totally understand that.
Well, the one that I think actually reminds me of Passion of the Christ is the last half hour of the movie, is they're torturing him to death.
Yeah.
It's like, we all know how this is going to end. We know that he's going to be disemboweled. The having to see it over and over again and like stretch him up again, it was just a little bit too much for me. I didn't think it was necessary.
Yeah, so that is a total criticism. I think it's a complete valid criticism. He does spend too much time in the violence of things quite often.
It was beautiful, though.
It was. And a good use of, they use practical effects, obviously, and they were very effectively utilized. You mentioned that this is an opportunity to showcase him, and he has plenty of opportunity to do the Mel Gibson crazy eyes all over the place. Too much.
True.
Someone had said online that this is wonderfully romanticized but never beautified. And on its surface, when I read that, I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then I thought about it. On its surface, that seems true, but it is not.
Okay, explain.
There are moments where things are completely romanticized in this movie. What I think they were trying to get at is that Mel didn't shy away from everybody, if there was shit and mud on your dress or clothing, it was there. He didn't clean things up and make them pretty on purpose. He was showing this was a dirty time, so everybody was dirty a lot. I think that's what they were trying to say. And I would agree with that. He didn't shy away from having people be completely bloodied or just mud for no apparent reason, except for they were walking down the street of their village. So that part I do agree with. He was trying to be authentic in that case, but again,
And the romanticizing of it, again, there was just no heart in this movie, because you didn't see him mourn his wife, and then the romance with the Princess of Wales was wildly gratuitous and yet didn't go very far.
No, it didn't go very far at all.
It was, the scene they had together I thought was very tame, and I got why she was interested in him, but...
That was the romance of the idea of something.
Exactly.
The biggest criticism that I have, and it's not the actor, but the Robert the Bruce character in this one, the presentation of him being so conflicted throughout the entire thing. I fully admire this guy. I have to betray this guy because I need a crown. I fully admire this guy. I'm going to betray this guy. That constant conflict, way too much. And there's one point when he's confronting his father where he does do a full Al Pacino over the top kind of thing.
Yes.
And that was too much. But just that whole conflict, you didn't need it all the time. I would have preferred that to be played a little bit more subtly rather than so over the top.
And also, were we as an audience supposed to not know who Robert the Bruce was at the end with the metal thing over his head? I think that was supposed to come off as a surprise, that, Mel Gibson was shocked that it was his ally. And the first time I watched it, I wasn't shocked, and this time I wasn't shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, you knew who it was going to be, and you knew why he was doing it.
Yep. It's easy to just kind of put this one on in the background and pay attention to battle scenes if that's what you really care about. But overall, I don't believe that this is as well crafted a movie as most people give it credit for.
I agree with you. I think I think it is well made,
I agree.
better than many.
Yep.
But I didn't think it was fantastic.
100% there. I think
Cool.
I think it gets put up on a pedestal and it doesn't deserve to be.
Agreed.
All right, shall we move on to a foreign language film? Which
Absolutely.
I'm always loving when that happens because it doesn't happen very often.
No.
But El Postino, The Postman, co-written and starring Massimo Trossi, directed by English filmmaker Michael Radford, based on the 1985 novel Ardiente Pazienta, The Burning Patience, by Antonio Scarmetta, which was itself adapted from a 1983 film written and directed by Scarmetta. The cast includes Trossi, Philip Muret, Maria Grazia Cucinotta. So sorry. Nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor in a Leading Role, Best Screenplay based on material previously produced or published. Did not win anything. Go with some facts.
All right. So one of the facts that most people know if they know anything about this movie is that Massimo Trossi was dying of heart disease during the making of this movie and died 12 hours after the movie was finished filming. He could only work an hour to 2 hours per day. He had a heart valve replaced. It was stemmed from a case of rheumatic fever when he was a child. Had a heart valve replaced about a year prior, needed another heart valve or a heart transplant, obviously did not live to get it. But also he was one of Italy's most beloved actors. So it was as if one of our celebrities died when this guy died. Exactly. This is his final film, and I think that's part of the reason it is beloved. I kind of dug for a little bit of a lesser known fact, because I think most people do know that, but I did not know that it was based in part on a true story, in that Neruda was a Chilean poet, later won the Nobel Prize. He was exiled to Capri based on his communism, and so it's the germ of the story of this man being exiled is true. All of that happened, and it happened in this village. It's just the Postman story that they built over a real story.
Right. I actually had to look up because I learned that he had died after once principal photography was finished, that he had died, and because of the ending, I looked up to see if that
if they missed anything.
If that impacted it, and they're like, no, his death did not impact any of the filming. We'd done all the principal photography. There were a couple side things we had to do, but he was not, because when you do see it and you see the ending with that in your head, there's a moment at the end where you're like, oh, I wonder if they had to scramble and adapt, but they didn't. That was the intended ending all along.
That's interesting because I knew about when he had died before I had seen the movie, so I didn't go there and think that. But that's absolutely an obvious question. Great question.
I had seen this before. Again, pretentious 20s. I had forgotten everything about it. Didn't remember a single thing about it. And going back in this time, I just had that vague notion of like, I think I remember liking this. I can't remember, but I will say I really enjoyed watching this movie. I had a grand old time. There's something that is, this is 100% an Italian film. This is not an American-made film at all. And there's just something different about the overall pacing and structure and sitting in moments for this kind of film that is absolutely not American, that I do find there's a certain comfort as you're watching this. I don't know if you felt that way.
I think we had almost exactly the same experience, because back in my pretentious 20s, and I'm guessing we were probably either at the movies on Exchange Street or Nickelodeon, which is where they had these movies, I went to go see it. I remembered vaguely liking it, and same thing, I really enjoyed this movie, and I just enjoyed, first of all, you cannot be on your phone, you cannot be doing other things.
Yeah, you have to
immerse yourself in the movie because of the subtitles, which is another reason why foreign films for me they both make me feel very stupid, but I enjoy them if I let myself really, really embrace it. And it's just a film you can almost experience it with all senses.
Yeah.
Like you can almost taste the food and smell the salt air, and it really was a full experience.
It really, really was. And everything is so, words almost don't help. It's incredibly well crafted. It's incredibly well shot. The actors all are superb in the roles that they're actually playing. Some are better than others, but that's fine. The story is a very, very, very simple story with hints of things. but there's just something in the way that all of this comes together that I just find, the only word I can keep coming back to is it's just comforting.
Yep.
Being the experience of watching this film is just a very comforting one. It's like a low pressure hug, not like a big one. You don't need a big hug, but it's just like a small pat on the back.
Well, I loved the main, it just, everything seemed to grow a little bit over the
Mhm.
course of the movie. So like the main friendship, it starts as very transactional.
Yes.
I shall give you your mail, you shall give me a tip. And then they start to have conversations. And then you get the sense a little bit that the main character is kind of bugging the poet a little bit.
Yep.
And then he starts to respond to him, and they start to talk about poetry and love. And they open up each other's worlds. And so I really, really liked the way that friendship grew. I liked the way the love aspect and that side story grew. And so I really did like that. There were a couple of things I didn't love about it. And there's really only one thing, and there's nothing they could do about it, is I think the character did look ill in the movie.
Yeah.
He just did not look well, and maybe it's because I knew that he was dying, but he didn't seem to be kind of a robust character.
No.
That and I know that maybe that wasn't the character, but he had a pallor about him that didn't look healthy,
I agree.
and it made me sad. What did you think about the fact that it went to kind of black and white in parts at the end?
The ending is a little abrupt for me.
Yeah, I agree.
For having, I mean, and this does take place over the course of, like, the principal action is just a very short period of time, but the movie itself takes place over a long period
Years,
of time.
yeah.
So it was almost in contrast to what the movie had been before, so that was a little jarring. I bought it because that was the ending they wanted to tell,
Mhm.
that he needed to die for some reason in this thing before. I didn't really understand that, but it was what was written, so they followed it, so I went along with it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was abrupt and a little jarring.
I did not like the fact that the main character died, because it didn't seem that there was a purpose to that, and you didn't really
Yeah.
understand why. But in listening to, I thought the way they did it, that it became something real for the poet, was really interesting. That he was walking the shoreline, kind of listening to what had happened in the rally that ended up in his friend's death, and you could see the death play across the poet's eyes. So it was all what we were listening to, and you were looking just at his face. And I thought that was a really lovely moment. And he was a great, great performer. But it just it all made me sad and want to go to Italy.
He got what he wanted, which was he had said earlier that a big dream that would never ever happen to him is that his name would be announced as a poet and he would step
Yes.
on stage,
Yeah.
which he got his moment. Unfortunately, that moment also ended up being his death.
Last moment, yes.
So I always question why that was necessary.
Yeah.
And this is not like we're going to Americanize this and make everybody
No.
happy, but there's no real justification except for those were things that happened during those times.
Sure.
But that's it. That's the only
Yeah.
explanation that you get is, well, that's what happens sometimes during that.
Exactly.
I absolutely love Mario as a character. It goes back to not the sissy space, but sissy space that covered it all. I'm ignorant, not whatever. Shit.
Stupid.
Yes. He is a slow man,
Mm-hmm.
but he's very curious,
Yes.
and he asks a lot of questions, and he's not asking questions to showcase any sort of ignorance. He's genuinely interested when he asks questions. He asks them of people when they're speaking about politics. He asks them of the poet about poetry, about life. He asks them of his wife, what her thoughts and feelings are. He's genuinely curious about
Yeah.
things. He's just slow to process. And I
Yes.
liked that as a character because I think in another actor's hands that would have been Forrest Gump.
That's actually a really good point. I completely agree with that. And at the beginning too, when he was sitting with his father, and you kind of think he's a bit of a lazy man too,
Yeah.
because he doesn't have a job and he doesn't want to be a fisherman. But then their conversation is, I don't want to be a fisherman. I don't like fish. I don't like fishing. I don't like any of that. And the father's like, then get another job. You don't have to be a fisherman.
Yeah.
And you could see him go, oh, I live in a fishing village, but I don't have to be a fisherman. I could do something else. And same thing, it's just it slowly washes over him.
Yes. And that is a consistent throughout the entire film. And that's it's basically a plot device for helping move things forward, is his consistently questioning. You see him then kind of take that information and do something with it. And then that leads to yet another conversation, leads to another conversation. So it's essentially a really well-crafted plot device, but totally works.
Yep, I completely agree. Yeah, he was a great character.
At times, it did seem a little Cyrano de Bergerac to me, like the poet is going to speak for
poet?
him.
Yeah.
And also, this is not me trying to insult religion, I swear, but it's funny to me because all they did was touch, and now they're married.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know,
it happens in the 50s in Italy.
Hardcore Catholic territory, I understand, but that one is just amusing to me. Like, you guys touched, off you go to the wedding chapel.
Absolutely. I took it more as they didn't trust that was all they did.
Yes. Well, Mom definitely did not.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, this one I really enjoyed this. This was a fun moment. I probably had the most enjoyment watching this one out of the rewatches of all the others. I'm not going to say it's my favorite, but it was definitely the most enjoyable for me.
I think I didn't like it quite as much as you did, but I definitely enjoyed it. And I'm glad that it held up to my vague memory of, hey, I think this was a good movie.
The last thing, and I thought it was a very tender and genuine moment, when Mario is questioning, like the poet is out there and he gets interviewed talking about his experience in Italy, and he mentions nobody specific, he just talks about it, and then everybody's to Mario like, you should be upset by this, why aren't you upset? And he's genuinely questioning like, well, why would he? What did I actually do for him? He was constantly doing things for me, which I don't think that's the correct interpretation.
No.
But in his mind, he's like, well, this is fine. Because, and that's again the questioning of the things. He's like, I don't have any reason to be upset with this man.
Yes.
And I liked that because we all know that, we're all feeling that what he's saying is not accurate, but from his standpoint, that is genuine.
Exactly. He lived a very simple existence and he was happy in it.
Yep.
Agree.
Highly recommend. It's on YouTube. You can see it for free on YouTube. That's the only place I was able to find it. Otherwise, I was going to spend $30 on a DVD, which I was not going to do.
Yeah.
All right, last one, Sense and Sensibility. Directed by Ang Lee, based on Jane Austen's 1811 novel. Emma Thompson wrote the screenplay and stars Kate Winslet, Hugh Grant, Alan Rickman, and a bunch of other people. Pretty much a who's who of
all British actors.
Yep. Was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actors, Best Supporting Actors, Best Writing, Best Cinematography, Costume Design, and Original Score. And Emma did win for the writing of it. Go with the facts.
All right, so first of all, I want to let everybody know that Sense and Sensibility is one of my top favorite 20 movies. So we actually have a standalone episode on Sense and Sensibility.
So this is probably going to be a little short.
Yeah, so we may not spend as much time on it here, but please go back and revisit that. One of my favorite fun facts is that Emma Thompson and Greg Wise, who played Willoughby, fell in love and got married and are married to this day. And then the other really great piece of fun fact out of this movie is that with her Oscar win, Emma Thompson became the first and is currently the only person to have an acting and writing Oscar. So I love that because I love Emma Thompson.
So yeah, we probably won't do a lot of conversations about this because that one's a pretty long one too. It's like 17 minutes long or so. So we do a pretty good deep dive in that, mostly you talking, which your movie, so sure.
Exactly. I was going to say, it came off of this. Yeah, Laura blabbers on about Sense and Sensibility. Which, by the way, I can do for more than 17 minutes at last.
Yeah. Absolutely. I will testify. I will say the same thing that I said before, and I did rewatch it again.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Nice. And it is far better than I have ever given it credit for previously. It is a very well crafted, well done movie. It's just not my jam, but even that, it is so well done that it takes itself out of that and elevates. Like we talked about, a musical has to be much better.
Yes.
This one, because it's a period kind of rom-com-y kind of thing, it has to be so good for me to be able to appreciate it the way it should be, and this one is that.
Yep, I agree. I will correct one thing, that it is a romance, it's not a romantic comedy.
Gotcha.
So even though there's a lot of comedy in it,
Yeah.
it's kind of a bit of a different genre.
I knew once it came off my tongue, I was like, I'm gonna get corrected for this. I know I am.
Yep, exactly. I've said that before, I'm guessing. So I'm just gonna go into a couple of things that I love about it. I think there are some challenges with the movie, but the things I love about it is, first of all, it's gorgeously shot.
Yep.
It's Ang Lee's first English movie as a director. And
Very bright.
very bright, just again, lots of expanse of the world, and then you're in a very small sitting room together, so he's able to do both of those successfully. I think it does so much with so little.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, first of all, one of the very first things that you see of Hugh Grant is he comes in and they're talking about the view from his room, and he's like, oh no, I saw that I was in the family wing and I asked to be moved to the guest room. So like in a line, he is a better person than his sister.
Yes.
That he recognized that he was upsetting the family by displacing one of the family members and chose not to. Like one line and you're like, oh, this is a good guy, I'm going to like him. And the same thing with Hugh Laurie is when his character comes in, like literally 2 words, and you know that he hates his wife, he hates his mother-in-law, and he's just
you will not.
Not enjoying any piece of this. So I really kind of love that piece.
Can I point out another thing that Hugh Grant's character does? When he first gets there and the younger daughter is having such a problem with this,
Yes.
and she's under the table, and very quickly he recognizes, okay, she's having an issue, what can I do? And starts to play a game that it takes Emma a moment to catch on to.
Yes.
But it's his initiation of that, and that I think is a pivotal moment for her when she starts to recognize something in him that most men do not have.
Agree.
So that to me was a big moment in the film, because that starts, I think, for her, the looking at him in a different light, which of course leads to love down the road.
Nope, I totally agree with that. I love I think the dialogue, obviously she won for writing, and a lot of these are Jane Austen's words, but the way that they were reformatted for this movie and shortened and kind of modernized a bit, I thought was fantastic. It's just the conversation. I love the conversation between Eleanor and Hugh Grant's character around, basically women can't inherit and they can't work. All they can do is marry well and rely on the kindness of their relations, like they're doing by living in that house. And I think it's something that, again, you see his kind of eyes light up of like, oh, I've never really thought about that. It's just the dialogue. There's one particular line that Willoughby says, and I have it in my notes somewhere that of course I cannot find. But they ask Willoughby something about, why do you hate the Colonel so much? And he says, because he tells me that it will rain on a day I want it to be fair. And I'm like, I just love that line. It's just a fantastic line of like, the guy pisses on my parade, that's why. And I am just a fun, frolicking kind of guy, and he's dour and it pisses me off. But the way he says it is so beautifully done. So I love the characters, themes, the conflict between the sisters, and the one thing that people say about this movie, and I think it is true, is that Emma Thompson is not well cast as Eleanor. She is too old for the part. And I think that's probably true, but I don't care, because she's Emma Thompson.
I'm not familiar with the source material, so I can't really comment on that part of it. I will say this, though. So we've had a lot of period pieces, and moving forward, this is one of the things that the Academy does. If you put out a period piece, one period piece is going to get nominated almost every year.
Absolutely.
And so previously it's been pretty dominated by Merchant Ivory.
Yep.
I think Ang Lee did a better job than Merchant Ivory of creating and crafting this world.
Mm-hmm.
Theirs is, they set the tone, they put you in the place, everything's gorgeous and immaculate, so you visually see it, but they don't craft the world as well as I think Ang Lee did in this movie. Very quickly, you understand the world that you're in, the ins and outs of how the society is working, what is happening, and it's just a little bit more, I guess, attention. I don't know if it's attention to detail or what, but this world just feels a little bit more well-crafted and lived in
Mhm.
than the previous ones we saw with Merchant Ivory.
I agree. I love a Merchant Ivory, but I agree with you that Ang Lee brings something different to the table.
Yeah.
Like one scene I can think of where no dialogue is said, or none really to the camera. It's the very first time that Emma Thompson and Hugh Grant kind of walk off together and kind of couple off to go discuss something. And you see the director takes you from Kate Winslet sitting at the piano, and she kind of notes it, not real thrilled with it, but she notes it. And then they pan out, and the mother walks by, and as she turns the corner, big smile on her face. She's liking that. And then the camera pans up, and you see Fanny on the balcony looking down, being like, "Oh no, my brother's not hooking up with her." So like in just a 30-second sweep,
Yeah.
you see this couple happening, and everybody's reaction to it with no words. And that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's very high level movie making, crafting for sure.
Yep, exactly. But yes, so go listen to more about Sense and Sensibility, where I rave and rant and tell everybody how it's wonderful.
I can't remember which number it was, but
It was low in the list of 20, like 20, 19, 18, somewhere
Okay.
around there, but still, 20 is few considering the number of movies I've watched.
yeah, this one, like I said, not my jam, but it's
Yeah.
so well crafted that it is definitely worth your time. Even if you're not, impress your girl on Saturday night date night. Pull this one
Mhm.
out. You will actually enjoy it as well. I promise you.
Yeah, I was just talking to a male friend recently who has not seen it, and I'm like, you need to see this movie. Yeah, so good. I'll tell him that.
Okay, the ending now. Actually, you know what? I am completely at a loss this year for
Me too.
what you're going to say, but
I'm gonna say that you do not think Braveheart should have won
No,
Best Picture.
I do not.
Okay.
And then honestly, I don't. Here's my honest answer. I don't care. I really don't.
Yeah.
Out of all of these films, they're all fine. If you hold a gun to my head and say you have to pick now, I'm going Babe.
I actually wondered if it would be Babe or Apollo 13.
Yeah.
I get that.
I'll go Babe. If you force me to make a decision, I'm going Babe. But my real answer is this year I don't care.
Yeah, and I don't need a gun to my head. I think it should have been Sense and Sensibility. I think it
Not
checked.
surprising.
I think it checked far more boxes. And I think that Braveheart was good and interesting, and I saw it, and that's all you need to say about that. So I think it should have been Sense and Sensibility.
All right.
All right.
That's the first time we have disagreed in a couple.
This is true. Yes, you're right.
couple-
But we're not fighting.
No, no.
I see your point, but yeah.
All right.
That's okay.
As always, like, subscribe, tell us what your thoughts are. And if any of you, please, for this year in particular, if any of you have really strong opinions, please
Love
comment.
to hear them.
Don't text Laura, comment and tell us what that is and why.
This is for you, Scott.
Yeah.
We love your comments, and I share them all with Daryl. But yes, comment.
All right, see ya.
Awesome.